First of all, missed opportunity to have a Secretary General from Eastern Europe.
Yes, symbolically it would have been very fair for Eastern European countries to get a Secretary General from there. However, I think that people who were hoping for Eastern European Secretary General miss the point a bit and maybe misunderstand the role of the Secretary General, in the sense that the Secretary General of NATO doesn't get to choose the direction of NATO. It's more the countries, the members themselves, and the situation on the ground that does. So the Secretary General is more like the face of NATO, but also someone who is coordinating between what the members want. And in that sense, someone like Mark Rutte, who is very experienced and who is very pragmatic, might be better than someone who is more ideological, like Kaja Kallas, for example.
You just mentioned experience, but it is considered great. Rutte's assets are negotiational skills, leaning to compromise. His ties with alliance are well known, so this election is not a surprise.
It's not a surprise, and I think that Mark Rutte is actually maybe the perfect person for this position, because when looking at the challenges that he will face in the next few years as the Secretary General, with the US disengagement from Ukraine and with issues with the threat of China increasing and so on, NATO will need a Secretary General that is able to talk with all its members, including ones that disagree. So someone who is as experienced and as good a negotiator as Mark Rutte is very important to have for this role. So he might be the perfect fit for the situation.
But with Rutte, we will have a Secretary General from a country that didn't meet the required target in budget contribution to alliance, who will now have to persuade others to do exactly that, spend more on defense.
That is true. However, the Dutch spending has actually increased quite a lot during the last few years. So even if it took a bit too long for Mark Rutte's governments to actually reach the 2%, they kept increasing the spending. And again, the Secretary General of NATO doesn't get to decide the direction of NATO. His role is to be the face of NATO, but also, again, to coordinate and negotiate and so on. And for that, his ideology doesn't matter so much. And we know that he's pro-Ukraine, and he has been pushing for the F-16s to go to Ukraine and so on. So his ideology is fine, but the main thing that we will need from him, the main thing that NATO will need from him is his negotiation skills to be able to talk to Trump in the case if he gets elected, but also to talk to other people like the leaders of Turkey, Hungary, and so on.
What you see as the main challenges, they are the same as the previous years, like war in Ukraine, relations to Russia and China. Do you see any new development in the next 5 to 10 years for the alliance?
Yes, I think one of the main challenges that Rutte will face very soon is the US elections. If Trump gets elected, he will need to convince Trump not to withdraw from NATO. But if Trump still decides to withdraw from NATO, he will need to face the consequences and deal with the situation. So that will be a big thing. And no matter who gets elected in the US this fall, the United States will be forced to disengage a bit from Ukraine because they will be focusing more on Asia, but they will also maybe be tied up into a conflict in the Middle East, which might start or escalate soon in Lebanon. So in that sense, he will have to face a disengagement from the US in Europe and Ukraine, and he will have to force Europe to spend more and take the US role. NATO will also have to take the US role as a leader and coordinator in aid that is going to Ukraine, and NATO will announce that in the summit with the new headquarters that will be started in Ukraine to manage the aid going to Ukraine. But again, also on China and on the shared ideology or political beliefs of NATO, there will be a lot of challenges ahead with potentially the Rassemblement National government in France and other issues. So he will face a lot of the same challenges, but also some new ones as well.
Allegedly, Rutte has the experience already with Trump during his first tenancy in White House, because he was supposedly into back-channel diplomacy to calming down Trump when he first said that US will withdraw from NATO.
Yes, there are rumors that Mark Rutte played a big role in convincing Trump not to withdraw back then. And again, his experience as someone who's capable of talking to everybody internally and externally. He's been talking to the far right internally. He's been talking to leaders such as Xi Jinping and so on. With his experience and with his coalition building skills and negotiation skills, and also the fact that he knows Trump personally, might make him the best person out there right now for this job to talk to Trump and convince him.
And finally, Jens Stoltenberg had excellent relations to Serbian state, non-member but partner state. Do you think it will continue with Rutte?
I think it will continue. I think the situation between and the relationship between NATO and countries in the Western Balkans will be dictated by what is going on the ground mostly. Rutte is from the Netherlands, and the Netherlands, like France, is one of those countries that is not so keen on NATO enlargement and EU enlargement. So that might play a tiny role, but overall the direction taken by NATO under Rutte's leadership should not change too much from the one that Stoltenberg had. So it will be mostly dictated by the situation on the ground.
Kiitos Joni, thank you for joining us.
Kiitos, have a nice day.
Joni Askola, vojni analitičar iz Finske, priključio se našem.